The year is 1977. Deep beneath the frozen steppes of Siberia, in a concrete bunker that doesn't exist on any map, General Viktor Petrov adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses and squints at the grainy photographs scattered across his metal desk. The images show something angular, bizarre, a triangular shadow caught by a spy satellite over the Nevada desert. Invisible? He chuckles, the sound echoing off bare concrete walls lined with blinking radar displays. His aide shifts nervously beside him. Perhaps invisible to common sense, the general slides the photos into a manila folder marked АМЕРИКАНСКАЯ ФАНТАЗИЯ, American Fantasy. But weeks later, his laughter stops. A radar alarm screams across the command center, sharp, insistent, terrifying. Then, silence. The screen flickers once, twice, then shows nothing but empty sky where something impossible should be. The fantasy plane has disappeared, not into space, but into the very fabric of physics itself. What began as a punchline has just rewritten the laws of war. This is the untold story of how the United States built an aircraft so advanced that it humiliated the Soviet military machine, and how a group of American engineers, working in a desert no one could find, made their country invisible. This is the story of the jet that mocked back. The Cold War is a war of watching. Across two continents, thousands of radar dishes spin in mechanical rhythm, their electronic eyes scanning empty skies for the flash of metal that could spell annihilation. In the depths of NORAD's Cheyenne Mountain, American operators stare at green screens, tracking every Soviet bomber that dares approach their borders. 6,000 miles away, their Soviet counterparts do the same, their own screens painting the night sky with traces of American reconnaissance planes that probe the edges of communist airspace like cautious fingers testing hot water. This is the world of 1975, a world where invisibility is impossible, where every flying machine leaves its signature written in radar waves across the electromagnetic spectrum. The rules are simple. He who sees first wins. He who disappears first, well, that's just science fiction. In the sprawling radar complex at Sary-Shagan, the Soviet Union's premier missile testing facility, Colonel Dmitry Volkov runs his morning briefings with the precision of a Swiss watch. His operators know every American aircraft by their radar signature. The massive B-52 Stratofortress with its cross-section as big as a barn door, the needle-thin U-2 spy plane that skims the edge of space, the impossibly fast SR-71 Blackbird that outruns missiles rather than hiding from them. The Americans, Volkov tells his staff, cigarette smoke curling from his lips, build their planes like billboards, big, loud, fast, but always visible. This is their weakness. This is why we will triumph. The confidence is not misplaced. Soviet radar technology has evolved into something approaching art. Their systems can track a sparrow at 50 kilometers, detect the heat signature of a jet engine from space, follow the metallic glint of an aircraft's skin through layers of clouds and interference. Nothing escapes the motherland's electronic eyes. Nothing. 3,000 miles to the west, in a windowless Pentagon briefing room that smells of coffee and anxiety, American defense planners stare at a different kind of map. This one shows the Soviet Union wrapped in layers of radar coverage so dense they resemble the rings of Saturn. Every approach route is monitored. Every flight path is observed. Every potential target is protected by an electronic net so sophisticated that American pilots have begun to whisper that the Soviets can see them coming from tomorrow. "Gentlemen," says Air Force General Charles Gabriel, his voice heavy with the weight of nuclear strategy, "we have a problem. The problem has a name, the Soviet Integrated Air Defense System. A network of radars, missiles, and interceptors so comprehensive that it has effectively made American nuclear bombers obsolete. In the event of war, U.S. aircraft would be spotted, tracked, and destroyed long before they could reach their targets. The doctrine of mutual assured destruction relies on the ability to retaliate. But how can you retaliate if your weapons can't reach the enemy? We need to become invisible," Gabriel continues, knowing how impossible it sounds. "We need an aircraft that radar cannot see." The room falls silent. Engineers exchange skeptical glances. Physicists shake their heads. The request violates everything they know about electromagnetic physics. Radar works by bouncing radio waves off objects and measuring the return signal. Metal aircraft are perfect reflectors. They light up radar screens like Christmas trees. To make an airplane invisible to radar would require bending the fundamental laws of physics. Or would it? In a cluttered office in Burbank, California, a Lockheed Corporation mathematician named Dennis Overholser is about to discover that sometimes the impossible is just the improbable waiting for someone smart enough to believe in it. Lockheed's Advanced Development Projects Division occupies a handful of unremarkable buildings in an industrial section of Burbank that looks more like an auto repair shop than the birthplace of aviation miracles. The workers call it the Skunk Works, after the mysterious factory in the Lil Abner comic strip that produced indefinable products from an indescribable process. The nickname is more accurate than anyone realizes. Under the leadership of the legendary Kelly Johnson, the Skunk Works has already produced 2 aircraft that redefined what was possible. The U-2 spy plane that soared higher than any Soviet interceptor could reach, and the SR-71 Blackbird, which solved the problem of Soviet air defenses by simply flying faster than their missiles. But Johnson is approaching retirement, and the man chosen to succeed him, Ben Rich, faces a challenge that speed and altitude cannot solve. Build something that radar can't see, the Pentagon has told him. The request might as well be, build something that light can't illuminate, or build something that gravity can't touch. Rich, a soft-spoken engineer with the stubborn optimism of a man who has spent his career making the impossible routine, calls his team together in a conference room decorated with photographs of aircraft that were once called impossible. The U-2 was impossible. Until it flew. The SR-71 was impossible. Until it broke every speed record ever set. We're going to make an airplane invisible, he tells them. The room fills with the kind of silence that follows either genius or insanity. The first hints of the American stealth program reach Soviet intelligence through the usual channels. Fragments of intercepted radio communications, snippets of conversation from electronic surveillance, blurry satellite photographs of mysterious shapes under desert camouflage. The intelligence reports land on desks throughout the Soviet military hierarchy, where they are received with reactions ranging from curiosity to outright ridicule. At the Zhukovsky Air Base outside Moscow, test pilots gathered around a samovar laugh at the latest American delusion. Invisible aircraft? Snorts Colonel Ivan Marchuk, a veteran of 1,000 sorties who has never met a radar he couldn't evade through skill and cunning. What's next? Invisible tanks? Invisible soldiers? Perhaps they will make the entire capitalist system invisible. The laughter spreads through Soviet military circles. In the intelligence briefings that flow up the chain of command, the American stealth program is dismissed as Projekt Fantasia, Project Fantasy. Western journalists, picking up on the skepticism, write articles with headlines like America's Invisible Folly and the Pentagon's Latest Pipe Dream. But in the classified files that sleep in safes beneath the Kremlin, one name appears repeatedly in connection with the American program. Pyotr Ufimtsev, a Soviet physicist whose theoretical work on electromagnetic wave scattering has been largely ignored by his own country's military establishment. His papers, published in obscure Soviet scientific journals, describe mathematical methods for calculating how electromagnetic waves reflect off geometric surfaces. The work is considered purely academic, interesting to theorists, useless to practitioners. No one in the Soviet Union pays attention to Ufimtsev's equations. They are about to learn why that was a mistake. In a secure hangar at Groom Lake, Nevada, a facility so secret it doesn't appear on any public map, something waits beneath a desert camouflage tarp. The hangar is surrounded by armed guards, electronic sensors, and enough firepower to stop a small army. The desert wind whistles through the metal walls, carrying with it the scent of sage and the weight of secrets. The guards don't know what's under the tarp. The technicians who service it aren't allowed to see its complete shape. The pilots who will eventually fly it have been training on simulators that show them only instruments and readouts, never the aircraft itself. But the mathematicians who designed it know what they have created. They know that under that innocent-looking tarp lies a machine that will rewrite the fundamental assumptions of modern warfare. They know that the angular, faceted shape beneath the canvas represents a new kind of power, the power of invisibility. They also know that when the Soviets finally understand what they're looking at, the laughter will stop forever. The shape under the tarp doesn't look like an airplane. It looks like a geometric nightmare, a crystalline insect, an origami experiment gone wrong. The angles are sharp and unforgiving. The surface is flat and alien. It's beautiful in the way a mathematical equation is beautiful. Not to the eye, but to the mind that can comprehend its elegant solution to an impossible problem. Soon, very soon, this ungainly creation will lift itself into the Nevada sky and demonstrate something that has never been demonstrated before, that the age of invisibility has begun, and that the nation that masters invisibility first will hold the ultimate trump card in the global game of power. The Soviets mocked America's invisible jet. They would not be mocking much longer. In the summer of 1975, Dennis Overholzer sits in his cramped office at Lockheed's Skunk Works, surrounded by towers of technical papers, empty coffee cups, and the accumulated detritus of a mind wrestling with the impossible. The Pentagon's request echoes in his head like a mathematical koan. Build an aircraft that radar cannot see. Every instinct he possesses as an engineer tells him it can't be done. Every equation he knows confirms that metal objects reflect radar waves with the predictability of sunrise. But Overholzer has built a career on finding solutions where others see only problems. He methodically works through every scientific paper on electromagnetic theory he can find, searching for some overlooked principle, some forgotten equation that might offer a glimpse of hope. That's when he finds it. Buried in the archives of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, translated from a Soviet scientific journal, is a paper titled Method of Edge Waves in the Physical Theory of Diffraction by one Pyotr Yakovlevich Ufimtsev. The paper is pure mathematics, dense, theoretical, seemingly useless for practical applications. Most Western scientists have ignored it completely. Overholzer reads it once, then again, then a third time, his excitement building with each pass through Ufimtsev's equations. The Soviet physicist has solved a problem that nobody knew existed. His mathematical formulas describe exactly how electromagnetic waves scatter off geometric surfaces, not just smooth curved surfaces like conventional aircraft, but angular, faceted surfaces cut at precise mathematical angles. According to Ufimtsev's calculations, if you could design an aircraft with the right combination of angles and surfaces, you could scatter radar waves away from their source instead of reflecting them back. The radar would still hit the aircraft, but the reflection would bounce away into empty space, leaving the radar receiver with nothing but silence. Jesus Christ, Overholzer whispers to his empty office. The son of a bitch figured it out. The irony is delicious. The Soviet Union, in its obsession with theoretical science, has published the mathematical key to its own defeat. Ufimtsev's work, ignored by his own military, dismissed as academic speculation by his own country's engineers, has been translated into English and filed away in American technical libraries where a desperate Lockheed mathematician with an impossible problem has just discovered it. Overholzer begins to run calculations. If Ufimtsev is right, if his equations accurately describe electromagnetic scattering, then it should be possible to design an aircraft that would be virtually invisible to radar. Not completely invisible, but so close to invisible that radar operators would dismiss the tiny return signal as electronic noise. The aircraft wouldn't be pretty. Ufimtsev's mathematics demand sharp angles, flat surfaces, geometric precision. It would look like a stealth fighter designed by a committee of mathematicians with no aesthetic sense whatsoever. But if the math works, Overholzer works through the night, filling page after page with calculations, sketching aircraft shapes that look more like origami experiments than flying machines. By dawn, he knows he has found something extraordinary. By noon, he has proven that the impossible is merely improbable. Ben Rich's office at the Skunk Works is decorated with photographs of aircraft that were once considered impossible. The U-2 spy plane that could soar above Soviet interceptors, the SR-71 Blackbird that could outrun surface-to-air missiles, the F-104 starfighter that was more rocket than airplane. Each photograph represents a moment when Lockheed engineers looked at a problem everyone else considered unsolvable and found a solution. Now Rich faces the ultimate unsolvable problem: invisibility. When Overholser burst through his door with a stack of calculations and a head full of Soviet mathematics, Rich's first reaction is skepticism. He's heard too many theories, seen too many promising ideas collapse under the weight of engineering reality. But as he reviews Ufimtsev's equations and Overholser's applications, his skepticism gives way to something approaching awe. "You're telling me," he says slowly, "that we can make an airplane invisible by making it ugly?" "Not invisible," Overholser corrects. "Stealthy. The radar return will be so small that operators won't be able to distinguish it from electronic noise." Rich studies the sketches. Angular, faceted aircraft that look more like geometric art projects than flying machines. They violate every principle of aerodynamic design he's ever learned. They're unstable, unmaneuverable, aesthetically offensive. They look like they were designed by someone who had never seen an airplane and had only the vaguest notion of what one was supposed to do. "Will they fly?" he asks. "Probably," Overholser admits. "With enough computer assistance and flight control systems, we can make anything fly." Rich grins. It's the same grin he wore when Kelly Johnson first showed him the plans for the SR-71, the same expression of delighted disbelief that accompanies every Skunk Works breakthrough. "Then let's build one and find out." The decision to proceed with stealth development represents a leap of faith that would be impossible anywhere except the Skunk Works. No other organization would bet its reputation on a technology derived from Soviet mathematical theory. No other group of engineers would attempt to build aircraft that violate every conventional wisdom about aerodynamic design. But the Skunk Works has never been a conventional organization. Rich assembles a team of engineers, mathematicians, and designers who share two characteristics. They're brilliant, and they're willing to believe in ideas that everyone else considers insane. They call themselves the Stealth Team, and they work under secrecy so complete that many of their own wives don't know what they do for a living. Groom Lake, Nevada is one of those places that exist in the gaps between maps. Officially, it's a detached section of Nellis Air Force Base, a patch of desert used for flight testing activities. Unofficially, it's the most secret aviation facility in the world, a place where the impossible becomes routine and the routine becomes classified. The lake bed itself is a perfectly flat expanse of dried mud that serves as a natural runway longer than most airports. The surrounding mountains provide natural screening from curious eyes, while the desert isolation ensures that anything that happens here will remain hidden from the outside world. The facility has been the birthplace of the U-2, the testing ground for the SR-71, and the development site for dozens of aircraft that have never been publicly acknowledged. Now it will become the proving ground for invisibility. The stealth team sets up shop in hangars that are more secure than most bank vaults. They work under lights that never dim, sleep in trailers that are swept for electronic bugs twice daily, and communicate in code words that change weekly. The paranoia is not misplaced. Soviet satellites pass overhead regularly, and any hint of the stealth program would trigger intelligence-gathering efforts that could compromise decades of work. The first prototype, designated Have Blue, takes shape in a hangar surrounded by enough security to protect a nuclear weapons assembly facility. The aircraft that emerges from months of theoretical work looks exactly as ugly as Overholser's calculations predicted. It's angular where conventional aircraft are curved, flat where they should be smooth, geometric where they should be aerodynamic. The test pilots who first see it react with a mixture of professional curiosity and aesthetic horror. "It looks like a paper airplane that got stepped on," mutters Major Hal Farley, the test pilot selected to fly the prototype's first mission. "Are we sure this thing is supposed to fly and not just sit there looking weird?" But Rich and his team have confidence in their mathematics. The angles may look wrong to the human eye, but they're exactly right for scattering radar waves. The surfaces may appear awkward, but they've been precisely calculated to deflect electromagnetic energy away from any receiving antenna. The shape may be ugly, but it's beautiful in the way that only a perfect solution to an impossible problem can be. On a moonless night in December 1977, Have Blue undergoes its first radar cross-section test. The aircraft sits motionless on the lakebed while radar installations scattered around the desert attempt to detect it. The test parameters are simple: illuminate the aircraft with radar and measure how much energy returns to the receiver. In the control bunker, engineers hold their breath as the first radar sweep begins. The screens show nothing. "Check the equipment," orders the test director. The technicians run diagnostics. Everything is functioning perfectly. Run it again. The second sweep shows the same result. Nothing. The radar is operating normally, but it's not seeing the aircraft sitting directly in front of it. "My God," whispers one of the radar technicians. "It's actually invisible." The flight testing of Have Blue begins with the kind of methodical caution that has kept Skunk Works pilots alive for decades. First come taxi tests, then short hops, then progressively longer flights as the engineers gain confidence in their creation. The aircraft proves to be every bit as unstable and unforgiving as its appearance suggests. Without constant computer assistance, it would be unflyable. But it does fly, and more importantly, it doesn't show up on radar. The first true test of stealth capabilities occurs during a night flight over the Nevada desert in January 1978. Have Blue lifts off from Groom Lake while radar installations at Nellis Air Force Base attempt to track it. The mission is simple: fly a predetermined course while radar operators try to maintain contact. Major Farley guides the angular aircraft into the desert sky, feeling the unfamiliar vibrations and control responses of a machine that was designed by mathematicians rather than pilots. Behind him, the lights of the test facility fade into desert darkness. Ahead lies empty sky and the most important test in aviation history. In the radar control room at Nellis, operators watch their screens with the intense concentration of people who know they're witnessing something unprecedented. The radar shows Have Blue's takeoff clearly, a small but distinct blip climbing away from Groom Lake. The aircraft maintains course and altitude exactly as planned. Then suddenly, it's gone. "Did he crash?" asks the facility commander, leaning over the radar operator's shoulder. "No, sir, I've got him on radio. He's still flying the mission profile." "Then where the hell is he?" The radar operator stares at his screen, which shows empty sky where Have Blue should be. The aircraft hasn't malfunctioned, hasn't crashed, hasn't diverted from its planned course. According to radio communications, Major Farley is flying exactly where the radar should be able to see him. But the radar sees nothing. For the first time in the history of aviation, an aircraft has become truly invisible to electronic detection. The age of stealth has begun. In the control bunker back at Groom Lake, Rich and his team watch the radar displays with the quiet satisfaction of people who have just proven that they can rewrite the laws of physics. The mathematics worked. Ufimtsev's equations were correct. The ugly angular aircraft disappearing into the Nevada sky represents more than just a successful test flight. It represents a fundamental shift in the balance of global power. "Gentlemen," Rich says quietly, "I think we just changed warfare forever." Outside, the desert wind carries the sound of jet engines across the empty landscape. But on every radar screen within 100 miles, the sky is silent and empty. For the first time in history, the sky has learned how to lie. The implications ripple outward like waves from a stone thrown into still water. If an aircraft can be made invisible to radar, then the Soviet Union's massive investment in air defense systems has just become obsolete. If stealth technology can be perfected and deployed, then American aircraft will be able to penetrate Soviet airspace with impunity. The electronic eyes that have watched the skies for 3 decades have just been blinded. In Moscow, Soviet radar operators continue their vigilant watch. unaware that the fundamental assumptions underlying their technology have just been shattered by a mathematician reading their own physicist's equations and an engineer crazy enough to build an airplane that looked like a geometric nightmare. The laughter that began with mockery of American fantasies is about to become a very different kind of silence. The first hints that something has changed come not from dramatic confrontations or obvious revelations, but from the kind of small anomalies that intelligence analysts are trained to notice. In radar stations scattered across the Soviet Union's vast periphery, operators begin reporting unusual phenomena, brief contacts that appear and vanish without explanation, electronic signatures that don't match any known aircraft, ghost returns that could be atmospheric interference or equipment malfunctions or something else entirely. At the Kamchatka Peninsula Radar Complex, Senior Lieutenant Alexei Voronkov stares at a scope that has just displayed something impossible. For exactly 47 seconds, his radar showed an aircraft-sized contact moving at subsonic speed through restricted airspace near the American Aleutian Islands. Then, without any change in course or altitude, the contact simply disappeared. Equipment malfunction, he logs in his daily report, because what else could it be? 600 miles to the south, at the Sakhalin Island monitoring station, another operator reports a similar incident. Then another, and another. The reports filter up through intelligence channels, where analysts begin to notice a pattern. Unidentified contacts appearing near American military facilities, maintaining course and speed consistent with aircraft operations, then vanishing as if they had never existed. Atmospheric anomalies, concludes Major Boris Kedrov, the intelligence officer responsible for analyzing radar anomalies in the Pacific region. The alternative, that American aircraft are somehow evading Soviet radar, is too disturbing to consider seriously. But the reports keep coming. Weather balloon contacts that move too fast and too purposefully to be weather balloons. Electronic interference that follows flight patterns. Radar returns that obey all the laws of physics except the law that says they should continue to exist. In the basement levels of the Lubyanka building in Moscow, where the KGB's Scientific Intelligence Directorate analyzes technical developments in the capitalist world, a file grows thicker each month. The file is labeled Radiolokatsiona Anomaly, Radar Anomalies, and it contains reports from radar operators across the Soviet Union describing contacts that shouldn't exist. The pattern is always the same: brief detection, normal flight characteristics, sudden disappearance. No aircraft crashes are reported. No emergency beacons are activated. The contacts simply vanish, as if they had learned to step sideways out of the electromagnetic spectrum. Colonel Viktor Petrov, the same officer who laughed at satellite photographs of angular American aircraft, finds himself reviewing these reports with growing unease. The Americans may build strange-looking aircraft, but they don't build aircraft that can defy the laws of physics. Yet the evidence is becoming harder to dismiss as coincidence or equipment. Failure. Perhaps, he mutters to his aide, American fantasy is becoming American reality. While Soviet intelligence struggles to make sense of radar anomalies, the stealth team at Groom Lake works with the focused intensity of people who know they possess the ultimate military secret. The success of Have Blue has validated every theoretical calculation, confirmed every mathematical prediction. Now the challenge is to transform a proof-of-concept prototype into an operational weapons system. The F-117 Nighthawk, the production version of the stealth fighter, takes shape in the secure hangars of Area 51 like a mechanical shadow gaining substance. Each aircraft is built by hand by workers who have undergone security investigations more thorough than those required for access to nuclear weapons. The manufacturing process itself is classified, not just the aircraft's capabilities or mission profiles, but the very methods used to create its radar-absorbent materials and precision-angled surfaces. Test pilots begin training on aircraft that exist only in computer simulations. They learn to fly missions they will never discuss, master weapons systems they cannot describe, practice tactics for a war that may never be fought but must always be prepared for. They are given call signs but no rank insignia, identification numbers but no public recognition. Major David "Ghost" Miller, one of the first operational F-117 pilots, describes the experience as flying a secret through a secret sky to deliver secrets to secret targets. The aircraft he flies has no official designation, no public acknowledgement, no existence outside the classified world of black programs and special access compartments. The F-117's first operational missions are flown not against enemy targets, but against American radar installations, in carefully controlled tests designed to validate the aircraft's stealth capabilities against the most sophisticated detection systems the West can deploy. The results are consistent and unambiguous. The aircraft is effectively invisible to every radar system tested against it. But stealth is more than just radar invisibility. The engineers at Skunk Works have learned to control every aspect of the aircraft's electromagnetic signature. Special coatings absorb radar waves. Engine inlets are designed to hide turbine blades from radar illumination. Even the aircraft's heat signature is managed through careful design of the exhaust system. The F-117 doesn't just avoid radar detection, it evades every form of electronic surveillance that might betray its presence. It's a ghost in the most literal sense, a machine that passes through the electromagnetic spectrum without leaving a trace. As the operational squadron grows from one aircraft to a dozen, then to 24, the pilots develop their own culture of secrecy. They live in separate quarters, fly separate missions, maintain separate identities from the conventional Air Force. They become the guardians of invisibility, the keepers of a secret so profound that its revelation would reshape the global balance of power. The moment when Soviet confidence finally cracks comes not in Moscow or at a major military installation, but at a remote radar station in the Kola Peninsula, where Senior Sergeant Yuri Fedorov is working the midnight shift on a bitter February night in 1982. Fedorov is a veteran radar operator with 15 years of experience reading the electronic signatures of American aircraft. He knows the radar return of every plane in the NATO inventory. The massive B-52 bombers that probe Soviet airspace weekly, the high-flying U-2 reconnaissance aircraft, the supersonic F-15 fighters that patrol the Norwegian border. He can identify aircraft types by their radar signatures the way a music lover can identify symphonies by their opening notes. That's why the contact that appears on his screen at 0347 hours is so disturbing. The radar shows an aircraft flying at 400 knots at 25,000 feet, maintaining a steady course that will take it directly over the Severodvinsk submarine construction facility. The flight profile is consistent with an American reconnaissance mission, except that no American reconnaissance aircraft has a radar signature this small. Fedorov increases his radar's power output, trying to get a clearer return. The contact brightens slightly, confirming that something is definitely there. He reaches for the telephone to alert Air Defense Headquarters, but before he can lift the receiver, the contact vanishes. Not fades, not decreases in intensity, vanishes, as if someone had thrown a switch and turned off the aircraft's existence. Fedorov stares at his screen, knowing that what he has just witnessed violates every principle of radar technology he has ever learned. Aircraft don't simply disappear from radar unless they crash, and crashed aircraft leave debris signatures. This aircraft didn't crash. It simply ceased to exist electronically while continuing to exist physically somewhere in the sky above the Kola Peninsula. His report triggers the first serious Soviet investigation into American stealth technology. Within hours, radar data from stations across the Arctic is being analyzed by the Soviet Union's best electronic warfare specialists. The evidence is fragmentary but consistent. American aircraft with radar signatures so small they're barely detectable are operating with impunity in areas that should be completely covered by Soviet air defenses. The investigation reaches the highest levels of the Soviet military hierarchy within days. Marshal of Aviation Pavel Kudakov, commander of the Soviet Air Force, reviews the evidence with the cold professionalism of a man who has built his career on understanding the capabilities and limitations of military technology. "How is this possible?" he asks the chief of his intelligence staff. "We believe the Americans have developed some form of radar stealth technology," comes the reply. "Our physicists are analyzing the theoretical possibilities. but preliminary assessment suggests they may have found a way to reduce radar cross-section to near-zero levels. Kudakov studies the radar plots, the fragmentary evidence of aircraft that exist and don't exist simultaneously. For the first time in his military career, he is looking at a technology that his own service cannot match, cannot counter, and cannot fully understand. What countermeasures do we have? He asks. The silence that follows provides its own answer. The discovery of American stealth capabilities triggers a fundamental reassessment of Soviet air defense doctrine. If American aircraft can penetrate Soviet radar coverage without detection, then every assumption underlying Warsaw Pact defensive strategy needs to be reconsidered. The electronic net that was supposed to protect the motherland from capitalist aggression has developed holes large enough for entire squadrons to pass through unnoticed. But the Soviets face a dilemma that will define their response to stealth technology. They cannot acknowledge the existence of a capability they cannot counter without admitting their own vulnerability. Public discussion of American stealth aircraft would amount to confessing that Soviet air defenses have been rendered obsolete by capitalist technology. Instead, Soviet military doctrine adapts quietly. New radar systems emphasize different frequencies and wavelengths. Air defense units begin training for scenarios involving low observable aircraft. Interceptor pilots learn new tactics for engaging targets that may not appear on their aircraft's radar until the last moment. The adaptations are necessarily incomplete. Stealth technology represents such a fundamental shift in the electromagnetic signature of military aircraft that countering it requires rebuilding air defense networks from the ground up. The Soviet Union begins this process, but it will take years to complete. Years during which American stealth aircraft will enjoy virtually complete immunity from Soviet air defenses. American intelligence becomes aware of Soviet efforts to counter stealth technology almost immediately. The beauty of possessing an invisible aircraft is that it can be used to monitor enemy countermeasures without the enemy knowing they're being monitored. F-117 missions begin to include intelligence-gathering flights that observe Soviet radar installations, electronic warfare systems, and air defense exercises. The psychological effect of stealth technology proves as important as its tactical advantages. Soviet air defense crews, aware that their systems may be unable to detect approaching American aircraft, develop a form of electronic paranoia. Every radar anomaly becomes a potential stealth aircraft. Every equipment malfunction could be evidence of American penetration. The certainty that once characterized Soviet air defense operations gives way to doubt and suspicion. In American intelligence circles, reports begin circulating about Soviet radar operators who have suffered nervous breakdowns after repeatedly detecting aircraft that their systems insist aren't there. The stories may be apocryphal, but they reflect a deeper truth. The nation that once mocked American invisible fantasies now lives in fear of aircraft they cannot see. The balance of psychological warfare, built up over decades of mutual deterrence, begins to shift. The Soviets, who once projected confidence in their ability to detect and destroy any American military aircraft, now must acknowledge that their skies may be penetrated at will by aircraft their technology cannot reliably track. The invisible jet has become more than a weapons system. It has become a source of doubt that undermines the entire Soviet approach to air defense. Every night in radar stations from the Arctic Ocean to the Black Sea, operators stare at screens that may or may not be telling them the truth about what flies above their homeland. The Americans have learned to make their aircraft invisible. In doing so, they have made Soviet radar operators question the evidence of their own electronic eyes. The mockery that began with laughter at American fantasies has become a silence broken only by the whisper of invisible wings passing overhead in the darkness. November 10, 1988. The Pentagon's river entrance briefing room fills with the controlled chaos of a major press conference. Defense Secretary Frank Carlucci approaches the podium with the measured confidence of a man about to rewrite public understanding of American military capability. Behind him, covered by a black cloth, sits a scale model of something that will, in the next few minutes, transform from the world's most closely guarded secret into front-page news across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlucci begins, For more than a decade, the United States has been developing and testing aircraft technologies that represent a fundamental breakthrough in military aviation. He pauses, letting the weight of the moment settle on the assembled journalists. Today, I can reveal the existence of the F-117A Nighthawk, the world's first operational stealth fighter. He pulls away the black cloth. The photograph that appears in newspapers the next morning shows something that looks more like a piece of crystalline sculpture than an aircraft. The F-117's angular surfaces and geometric precision give it an otherworldly appearance that seems to belong more in science fiction than in a Pentagon briefing room. To eyes accustomed to the smooth curves and flowing lines of conventional aircraft, the Nighthawk appears almost alien, a machine designed by mathematics rather than aerodynamics. The revelation sends shockwaves through military establishments worldwide. For more than a decade, American stealth aircraft have been operating in complete secrecy. Now, suddenly, the world knows that the United States possesses aircraft that can penetrate any air defense system ever built. In Moscow, the reaction is swift and profound. The same Soviet analysts who dismissed American stealth fantasies now find themselves staring at newspaper photographs of an aircraft that validates every radar anomaly they've been tracking for years. The mystery contacts, the unexplained disappearances, the electronic ghosts that haunted their radar screens. All are suddenly explained by the angular shape revealed in the Pentagon briefing room. General Dmitry Volkov, the same officer who once laughed at satellite photographs of strange American aircraft, holds a copy of Pravda with the F-117's photograph on the front page. The headline reads, "Amerikansky Nevidimy Samolet Sushestvuet." American invisible aircraft exists. The article describes the revelation in the careful language of Soviet journalism. But between the lines, the message is clear. The Americans have achieved something that Soviet technology cannot match. How long? Volkov asks his intelligence staff. How long have these aircraft been operational? The answer, when it comes, is devastating. Possibly since 1983, Comrade General. Our radar anomaly report suggests they may have been conducting regular penetration missions for at least 5 years. 5 years. For 5 years, American aircraft have been flying through Soviet airspace undetected, gathering intelligence, testing defenses, demonstrating that the electronic barriers protecting the motherland are as permeable as morning mist. January 17, 1991, Baghdad. The city sleeps under a blanket of electronic surveillance that represents the most sophisticated air defense network the Soviet Union has ever exported. Hundreds of surface-to-air missile sites ring the Iraqi capital. Radar installations operate on multiple frequencies, their overlapping coverage designed to detect any aircraft that dares to approach. French-built interceptors sit on alert at nearby air bases, their pilots trained in Soviet tactics for engaging high-value targets. At 2:51 a.m. local time, this entire network fails catastrophically. The first indication of attack comes not from radar warnings or missile lock alerts, but from the flash of explosions illuminating the night sky over Baghdad's most heavily defended targets. The telephone exchange that coordinates Iraq's air defense communications disappears in a fireball that can be seen for miles. The central command bunker that controls surface-to-air missile sites vanishes in a series of precisely targeted explosions. The main radar installation at Al-Taji Air Base simply ceases to exist. Iraqi air defense crews, trained by Soviet advisors and equipped with Soviet weapons, stare at their screens in incomprehension. Their radars show empty sky. Their communication networks report normal operations right up to the moment they stop reporting anything at all. Their missile systems indicate full readiness to engage targets that their detection systems insist aren't there. In the hardened command post beneath Baghdad's Ministry of Defense, General Hakim al-Azawi watches his air defense network disintegrate without ever detecting the aircraft that are destroying it. Radio calls from missile sites cut off mid-sentence. Radar installations fall silent without warning. The electronic net that was supposed to protect Baghdad from American aggression is being systematically dismantled by aircraft that exist only as explosions marking the destruction of their targets. "Where are they?" he shouts at his radar operators. Where are the American aircraft? The operators can only shake their heads. Their scopes show what they have shown all night. Empty sky punctuated by the electronic signatures of Iraqi defensive systems going offline one by one. The aircraft destroying Baghdad's defenses are F-117 Nighthawks, invisible to the Soviet-supplied radar systems that protect the city. Each stealth fighter carries 2 precision-guided bombs, and each bomb finds its target with the mathematical certainty of Ufimtsev's equations made manifest in high explosive. The same Soviet mathematical theory that made stealth possible now guides American weapons to Soviet-built targets with surgical precision. By dawn, Baghdad's air defense network, one of the most comprehensive ever deployed, has been effectively destroyed by aircraft that never appeared on a single radar screen. The demonstration of stealth capability is so complete, so overwhelming, that it redefines every assumption about modern air warfare. In Moscow, Soviet military observers watch CNN coverage of the Gulf War with the sick fascination of people witnessing their own technological obsolescence. Every destroyed radar installation, every silenced missile site, every successful stealth attack represents the failure of Soviet military doctrine. The air defense systems that were supposed to demonstrate Soviet technological prowess have instead become monuments to American stealth superiority. Marshal Yevgeny Shaposhnikov, the Soviet Air Force commander, watches footage of F-117s landing at their Saudi Arabian base after completing missions over Baghdad. The aircraft taxi to their parking areas like mechanical shadows, their angular surfaces absorbing the desert sunlight as efficiently as they absorb radar waves. "Comrade Marshal," his aide asks quietly, "what are our countermeasures?" Shaposhnikov's answer captures the profound shift in military balance that stealth technology represents. "We have no countermeasures. We are fighting an enemy we cannot see." The Gulf War's demonstration of stealth capability marks the beginning of a new era in military affairs. For the first time in history, one nation possesses aircraft that can attack any target, anywhere, without warning. The traditional balance of offensive and defensive capabilities, the equilibrium that has defined military strategy since the invention of radar, has been permanently shattered. American stealth technology proves to be more than just a tactical advantage. It becomes a strategic revolution that redefines the nature of military power itself. Nations can no longer depend on early warning systems to provide time for defensive responses. Air defense networks, no matter how sophisticated, become vulnerable to systematic destruction by aircraft their sensors cannot detect. The psychological impact proves as significant as the tactical advantages. Military planners worldwide must now consider the possibility that their most critical installations, command centers, radar sites, communications nodes, can be destroyed without warning by aircraft that may already be overhead. The certainty that once characterized defensive planning gives way to a persistent uncertainty about what may be approaching through invisible skies. Soviet military doctrine, built around the assumption that radar provides reliable early warning of approaching threats, requires complete revision. New training programs emphasize passive defense and camouflage. Radar systems are redesigned to operate on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Air defense units learn to function without centralized coordination, assuming that their command and control networks may be destroyed in the opening minutes of any conflict. But these adaptations cannot address the fundamental problem. Stealth technology has given the United States a form of military power that cannot be matched by nations limited to conventional aircraft design. The mathematical principles underlying radar stealth are not secret. Ufimtsev's papers have been available in translation for years. The engineering capabilities required to transform mathematical theory into operational aircraft, however, represent a technological achievement that few nations can duplicate. The F-117 Nighthawk becomes a symbol of American technological superiority that extends far beyond military applications. The same computational capabilities that made stealth possible, advanced computer modeling, precision manufacturing, sophisticated materials science, position the United States at the forefront of the emerging information age. The invisible aircraft serves as proof that American technology has achieved a qualitative advantage that quantity alone cannot overcome. In the months following the Gulf War, a quiet transformation occurs in military establishments worldwide. The era of visible warfare, in which opposing forces could at least detect each other's presence, gives way to an age of uncertainty in which the most dangerous threats may be the ones that cannot be seen. Soviet military academies begin teaching courses on asymmetric warfare and invisible threats. NATO planners develop new doctrines based on the assumption that stealth aircraft will dominate future conflicts. Arms control negotiations must address the unique challenges posed by weapon systems that may not be detectable by traditional monitoring methods. The personal cost of this transformation becomes apparent in the memoirs and interviews published years later. Soviet radar operators describe the psychological toll of working with systems they know may be unreliable. American stealth pilots reveal the strange isolation of flying aircraft that officially don't exist. Intelligence analysts from both sides document the paranoia and uncertainty that characterizes military planning in the age of invisibility. Perhaps most significantly, the revelation of stealth technology marks the beginning of a broader transformation in the nature of warfare itself. The same principles that made aircraft invisible to radar, the manipulation of electromagnetic signatures, the use of advanced materials, the application of sophisticated computer modeling, point toward a future in which invisibility becomes the norm rather than the exception. Stealth ships that cannot be detected by sonar, ground vehicles that evade infrared sensors, infantry equipment that defeats visual recognition systems, electronic warfare capabilities that make entire military units disappear from enemy surveillance networks. The F-117 Nighthawk, ugly and angular and mathematically perfect, becomes the harbinger of a world in which the most powerful weapons are the ones that cannot be seen until the moment they strike. Pyotr Ufimtsev, the Soviet physicist whose mathematical theories made American stealth possible, finally receives recognition for his work, not from his own country, which ignored his research for decades, but from the nation that used his equations to revolutionize warfare. In a final irony that captures the essence of the stealth story, the man who provided the theoretical foundation for Soviet defeat becomes a symbol of how scientific knowledge transcends national boundaries. The Soviets mocked America's invisible jet. When the mockery ended, they discovered that the future of warfare had arrived wearing the angular face of mathematical precision, and it belonged to their enemies. 20 years after the first F-117 disappeared from Soviet radar screens, the world has become a fundamentally different place. The principles that made aircraft invisible have spread like digital DNA through every aspect of military technology, intelligence gathering, and electronic surveillance. What began as a solution to the problem of penetrating Soviet air defenses has evolved into a comprehensive philosophy of power based on invisibility. Modern warfare now assumes that the most dangerous threats are the ones that cannot be detected. Submarine detection systems search for vessels designed to be acoustically invisible. Electronic surveillance networks probe for signals that may not exist. Intelligence agencies track movements of people and resources that may be hidden by sophisticated camouflage and deception technologies. The stealth revolution has reached beyond military applications into the civilian world. The same mathematical principles that scattered radar waves away from the F-117 now hide cellular phone conversations from electronic eavesdropping, protect internet communications from government surveillance, and shield financial transactions from unwanted scrutiny. The age of invisibility that began with angular aircraft over Nevada has become the age of encrypted everything. But invisibility carries its own psychological burden. The nation that perfected stealth technology now lives with the knowledge that others may be developing their own invisible capabilities. American radar operators scan skies that may contain aircraft they cannot see. Intelligence analysts search for threats that may be hidden by technologies they don't fully understand. The power of invisibility, once uniquely American, has become a source of persistent uncertainty about what may be approaching undetected. Dr. Alan Brown, one of the original Skunk Works engineers who helped design the F-117, reflects on the transformation that stealth technology has brought to military affairs. We set out to solve a specific problem: how to penetrate Soviet air defenses. What we discovered was something much more profound. We learned that in the modern world, the ultimate power is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to remain unseen while you decide whether or not to destroy. The philosophical implications extend beyond military strategy. In a world where invisibility is possible, the relationship between power and visibility has been fundamentally altered. Traditional military doctrine assumed that threats could be detected and assessed before they became critical. Stealth technology has created a world in which the most significant dangers may never be seen until they manifest as action. The Soviet Union that once mocked American invisible fantasies no longer exists, but the fear that stealth technology created has outlived the Cold War. Modern Russian military doctrine explicitly acknowledges that American aircraft may be operating in Russian airspace without detection. Chinese air defense networks are designed around the assumption that approaching threats may not be visible on radar. European NATO members train their pilots for engagements with aircraft that may not appear on their sensors until weapons are already being released. This persistent uncertainty has created a new form of strategic paranoia. Nations invest enormous resources in detection systems designed to counter stealth technology. But the fundamental problem remains. How do you prepare for threats you cannot reliably identify? The electronic signatures that once provided clear warning of approaching aircraft have given way to ambiguity and doubt. The psychological impact extends to the individual level. Radar operators, air defense crews, and intelligence analysts work with the constant awareness that their most sophisticated systems may be providing incomplete or misleading information. The confidence that once characterized electronic surveillance has been replaced by a form of technological anxiety. The persistent worry that something important may be hidden in the electromagnetic shadows. Former Soviet radar operator Viktor Petrov, now living in retirement outside Moscow, describes the transformation. Before stealth, we knew what we were looking for. Every aircraft had a signature, every mission had a pattern. Now, we know only what we can see, and we cannot trust that what we see is everything that exists. It is like being partially blind and knowing it. This uncertainty has become a permanent feature of the modern strategic landscape. Military planners must consider scenarios in which their most critical installations may be under attack by aircraft they cannot detect. Intelligence agencies must analyze threats that may be hidden by technologies they cannot counter. The clear distinctions between peace and war, between safety and danger, have been blurred by the possibility that invisible threats may be approaching at any moment. In a control room deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, the electronic eyes of America's early warning systems scan skies that may contain aircraft invisible to their sensors. The irony is not lost on the operators. The nation that created stealth technology now lives with the fear that others may have mastered the same capabilities. On the screens that once showed every aircraft in North American airspace, there are gaps, spaces where something might be flying that the radars cannot see. The operators scan these electronic blind spots with the intensity of people who know that invisibility, once achieved, can be turned against its creators. The technology that began with Dennis Overholser reading Soviet mathematics in a Burbank office has evolved into something that shapes every aspect of modern military planning. The ugly, angular aircraft that first disappeared from radar screens over Nevada has spawned a generation of invisible machines that patrol skies, probe ocean depths, and navigate electronic networks without leaving detectable traces. But perhaps the most profound legacy of stealth technology is not the aircraft it has created, but the uncertainty it has introduced into human affairs. The world has become a place where the most significant events may be initiated by actors who remain invisible until the moment of revelation. The electronic networks that were supposed to provide early warning and tactical advantage now carry within them the seeds of doubt about their own reliability. The F-117 Nighthawk, retired from active service but preserved in museums, sits silent in climate-controlled hangars like a technological artifact from humanity's first encounter with true invisibility. Visitors stand before its angular surfaces and try to comprehend how something so obviously present could ever have been absent from radar screens. The mathematics that made its invisibility possible are displayed on nearby placards. But the deeper mystery, how humans learned to make the visible invisible, remains as incomprehensible as magic. The Soviets mocked America's invisible jet. When the screen went dark and the laughter stopped, they realized that the future had arrived wearing a face they could not see. Now, decades later, humanity lives in a world shaped by that first moment of electronic blindness, searching skies that may contain threats that exist in the spaces between visible and invisible, known and unknown, seen and unseen. In the end, the most lasting achievement of stealth technology may not be the aircraft it made invisible, but the doubt it introduced into the human relationship with technology itself. In learning to make machines disappear, America taught the world that in the age of advanced technology, the most dangerous threats are always the ones we cannot see coming. The radar screens flicker with their eternal vigilance, painting pictures of a sky that may never again tell the complete truth about what flies within it. The age of invisibility has begun, and there is no returning to a world where seeing was believing and detection meant security. Somewhere in the electromagnetic shadows, invisible wings continue to carry invisible threats through invisible skies, while the electronic eyes of humanity strain to see what may forever remain unseen.